We have the Machine Gun Hammer the Ancients build. Crazy fun. Fun and efficient. I've played Hammer the Ancients before, made a Bleed Chains video, which was also a lot of fun. And I said, you know what, I want to wait a little bit until I min-max thing. Then so many Whirlwind videos came up, but if you play Hammer the Ancients, there are so many issues. It's clunky to play. It's so risk and reward, feast or famine playstyle. I tried to get rid of all of that today in this video, and I think I got pretty close. It's really enjoyable. I've actually been having a good time playing it. As a Whirlwind enjoyer, there's nothing more fun than Spin to Win. People call it dull, to each their own, but as someone who thoroughly enjoys Whirlwind, I like this build. So we're going to talk about that, all of the really cool changes I made, so let's go. What up, team? It is MurderInc. We are talking about the Machine Gun Hammer the Ancients build. So, what's different from this build? First, let's show some gameplay here. Alright, so what I'm going to do is a bit different this time. I'm going to show you the progression of this build. So I started out on tier 25. This is the highest run in the whole dungeon when I was really new with this. So, I'm not playing Unbridled Rage. You might be thinking, wait, how are you going to do any damage? So I'm using Weapon Master instead here. As you can see, I'm pumping just fine in a 75. Now this technically is my first attempt. Like I said, this is the best results I got. So what does that mean? That means that the final build I'm going to show you is going to have a much lower ceiling than this build, but there's a catch to this build. Not the catch that I almost just died there. Like I said, I'm not someone who I've pushed high with Hammer the Ancients, but this is very different than your typical Hammer the Ancients playstyle. So as you can see in the bottom, we have two shouts. We have the Challenging Shout and Warcry for Unstoppable, I believe, or damage. One of the two. I think this one might not have the Unstoppable. I don't remember the logos well. But we're using Hammer the Ancients, Lunging Strike, Leap, and then the Steel Grasp. Steel Grasp was key, and this is one of the reasons why I did not make this the final version of the build, because if you can see what I just did right there, every time you Steel Grasp, you have to animation cancel with your evade key to instantly Hammer the Ancients afterward. If you don't do that, it's clunky. There's like a delay time, and you can die in that small period of time here. So I stood in the fire there. That was just kind of GG's. We can go to kind of a better showcase of the skill here. So even without Unbridled Fury here, we're still pumping in a 75. Like, we're just still pumping here. We have really high vulnerable uptime because we have, what's it called, Steel Grasp. If you don't know how Steel Grasp works, we're proccing vulnerable with that skill. All right, let's get to some. Okay, so this is a good pull. Okay, and that was a perfect example. So let's go to this right here. I'm going to Steel Grasp, evade, and instantly, watch, you're going to see it right here. Instantly slam. I'm going to animation cancel. So here I'm proccing the Weapon Mastery. Just pounding the ground. Really good numbers for, I mean, considering that I don't have, all right, wait, here, is it here? Pull? Yeah, pull, evade, and then slam. That's the key right there. So there was a 12 million crit. And then again, I swear, okay, let's go back to this. This tilted me. Wait for it. We're going to see the 12 million one more time. Look at this. Ain't no way I'm standing in that circle. I even looked at it. I remember when I was slamming the ground here. Ain't no way that clipped me. Anyways, another death to something stupid that I did. But you can kind of see how if you're okay with the playstyle and you're comfortable, I was not comfortable with this. I haven't practiced this. Like I said, no tester in their right mind uses their first testing key as a 75. I don't care who you are. Most video showcases you see for these amazing new fun builds are like 50s, because that's just, they don't want to look stupid testing too high because the build's probably going to fall apart, and it's kind of just like a bait to get, I don't know, people to play their builds, but it is what it is. So I just went in here on this 75 here and said, you know what? I've played Hammer of the Ancients a little bit, nothing like this build, but I think I can get away with it. So that's what I did. I tested it out here, and this is, of course, using the, and I didn't notice this guy was vampiric until late, and then, of course, the damage reduction or damage resistant aura mobs appear. So you can see this is a very involved playstyle, very, very involved. So that's the basic kind of tune of the first iteration here, and you have to use the Quake to your advantage. What do I mean? If you don't know this, Hammer of the Ancients is bugged. It's bugged because when you slam the ground, you have the aspect that repeats the damage in a Quake. The outer edge of the Quake is where I'm getting 12 million, and where people who run Unbridled Rage are hitting for 60 million damage. The thing is, you don't need to hit for 60 million damage for anything. Right? The average player does not need to hit for 60 million damage. Even people pushing Nightmare tiers of 100, I mean, Whirlwind has, now multiple people have cleared Whirlwind at 100, by the way. They're not hitting for 60 million. They're critting for 2, 3, 4 while spinning, not 60. So not taking Unbridled Rage and getting that free rage is amazing. So I didn't really showcase what I wanted to with this version, but this is just the best version. Steel Grasp is OP. You have to do the evade trick, you have to corner hit with the Quake circle, but that wasn't really my style and not really what I wanted to kind of show to everybody. So we did this. Okay, so now we're in a 70 run here. This is with, let me hover off the screen to see the abilities. So this is where I took 3 shouts, with Stomp, with Lunging Strike, and then finally Hammer of the Ancients here. Now the key here is going to be, look how fast I'm using Hammer of the Ancients, and take notice of my rage here. Okay, so I'm proccing the Weapon Mastery, boom, one shot. I mean, it's not a good example when I'm one-shotting, but the fact that a lot of people are worried that if you don't take Unbridled Rage, if you're not going to do enough damage, we're doing a 70 and we're just cleaning house here. We are fine. You're going to see where the damage issue may be a problem down the line, but as of right now in a 70, we're completely fine here. And we're just spamming within our shout windows over and over again with no penalty. So that's the really good news here for sure. Let's go find some more density if we can. Am I going to kill this pack here? Yeah, I'm going to kill this pack. Might as well watch it. So you can just look at my rage. It's a small pack. Unfortunately, the dungeon that I picked doesn't have very high density, which, I mean, it's a good and a bad thing. A lot of people are afraid and have noticed, I know I've noticed for sure, if you don't have good density with Hammer of the Ancients, it's not that fun because you're not getting a lot of rage, or I keep calling it rage, it's really fury. You're not getting a lot of fury back, and it's kind of just a mess. So we have this pack here. Let's see how we do. Spamming the ground. Yeah, everything is just kind of melting. My rage, again, I hit 1 mob, 2 mobs. We're still above cap here and can cast, which is the key. There we got all this going on. Moving ahead. Okay, here's a nice dense pack here. We killed that. I mean, we're just killing things so quickly. And you can just spam it over and over again with really high attack speed. That's why this is a machine gun build. Really high attack speed. We're using the accelerating aspect, which of course I'll get into on the... Okay, now this is the boss. This is the only downside of this version of the build here. You're not going to be one-shotting any bosses. You actually have to do the mechanics. Now, in my opinion, this isn't really a downside because the clear's way faster no matter how you look at it. You're not overkilling things, you're moving much faster, you're able to spam Hammer of the Ancients much faster. It's not clunky at all, but the bosses, you have to do the mechanics. Starting at 70, you just have to do it. I mean, well, starting at wherever your gear level is, keeping in mind that I'm geared for Whirlwind, I have like all Whirlwind stuff on. The only thing for Hammer of the Ancients I have for this build are gloves with plus rank to Hammer of the Ancients. Everything else on my gear, I have no max fury rolls, so we're losing tons of damage there, but yeah, so I have to do the mechanics. I mean, again, this boss isn't the greatest, especially if you can't one-shot it. You actually like have to play how it's supposed to be played, but it is what it is. For me, it's not a big deal. I don't think it's going to be a big deal for a lot of other players, but I fixed this in the, I guess, final iteration of what I came up to with. And like I said, I just wanted to show you the, I guess, theory crafting prospect of this. You can't just stand in all the mechanics. You actually have to play the game. I know it sucks to hear. What do you mean I have to play the game and I can't just do Nightmare 100 like the Hota guy who used that healthy bubble necklace and waited for it to become off cooldown, take an hour to do it, kill no bosses? No, this is you actually have to play the game for this Hammer the Ancient build here. So now let's get to the final run of my final iteration, which is this 69 Wraithwind Wiles. Okay, so what did I do? We still have the 3 shouts. Couldn't get rid of them. I wanted to, but I couldn't get rid of them. We added Deathblow as the final weapon mastery skill here, which pumps, by the way. And then Lunging Strike and Hammer the Ancient. So this is the final one. This is the one I've been using, and I've been ton of fun with it. You can see I'm just spamming the ground over and over again. Even when there's one mob left, I'm not stuck there like an idiot lunging striking over and over and over again. You can see I'm stutter stepping forward and just hammer the ancients everywhere. 9 million crits without unbridled rage. There's no reason to be hitting for 60 there. There's absolutely no reason. Even if I raise this to 79, you're still killing everything with those numbers. 11 million, 7 million. Look at this, we're pumping. Absolutely pumping. So I love this build here. It does use, like I said, Deathblow instead. What does Deathblow do? Not much for the overall run. So if you didn't know this, I was using Leap because you can assign a weapon to Leap, and you have to swap weapons 3 times to get the big multiplier for the, what's it called? I just had the name. Weapon Mastery, Walking Arsenal buff, that's it. So I just replaced everything with Deathblow. Now, I'm not playing this 100% because, like I said, I swapped to this skill, then did this run. What you really want to be doing is you want to be Lunging Strike, then spamming Hammer the Ancients, and anything you can execute with Deathblow, that's where you want to use Deathblow. It's kind of hard to do with a build like this, but you'll see why Deathblow comes in handy when we do in fact get to the boss. It makes the boss fight not one shot again, but much faster. Because what happens, if you're not familiar with Deathblow, if you execute a mob, or execute meaning kill a mob with Deathblow, it resets the cooldown. Now technically I could take an aspect, because I'm using aspects that you may not want to use here, to get a second charge on Deathblow, which will increase your overall damage by a lot here, but I'll show you what I'm taking instead here. So you pretty much get the idea of the gameplay here. We're spamming Hammer the Ancients much more than any other Hammer the Ancients build. Our attack speed is incredibly fast, especially in our basic attack. I don't think I use Lunging Strike too often besides to get these. So if you're not familiar, the 3 bars above my level bar, which is 100 at the moment, I'll let this stay stationary here. You can see when they fill up orange, that's the ticking timer for when, if you have all of them up, that's when you get the big damage boost. If not, I believe it's like, I'll read the tooltip later, but you get a damage boost for each weapon arsenal buff that you're currently using that's orange here. And then when they're all 3 of them are active, you get an extra bonus on top of that, which is really, really nice here. So Lunging Strike has incredible attack speed with this build. So does Hammer the Ancients. And here, again, we're just slamming the ground very fast over and over again. So that's what I like about it, right? You're never rage starved. It's not clunky to play. And this build style is made for, I think it's what, console players that said they can't use the shift click where you're just hitting the ground anywhere you want. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure someone said it was console players. So what I did with this version of the build during this run is I didn't try to quake hit anything. I just straight up hit the mobs as best as I could with Hammer the Ancients and didn't worry about the tech, because I do think eventually it's going to get nerfed, and this is going to be a build that if I ever play Hammer the Ancients for a long period of time, you're looking at the build. It's this build right here. This is the one I'm going to play for sure. I don't care about critting for 1 billion and one-shotting everything if it's going to be miserable every second outside of that one-shot window. Alright, so we have here. Now let's go to the boss so we can see what the boss is like. Alright, I went a little bit too far here. Alright, here's the boss. And I went too far back. We'll just start from here. Okay, so as we can see here, I did use Deathblow. You can't see it already. It did not crit, and I was kind of like, if I crit, he would have been below half health already. So here, you can see still dodging mechanics, you still have to do the boss fights. It's the same as the grasping chains, except he probably would have been much closer to dead if the Deathblow crit. I didn't see if the Deathblow crit did, let me see. Alright, so I had just used it there. Oh, I went back way too far. Yeah, I actually didn't even, I don't think that one crit either, because I didn't see it go off. Alright, let's see, we just have to wait 1 seconds. Okay, it's up again. Waiting for it to go vulnerable. Okay, again, it didn't crit. So 0 for 2 for Deathblow crits. That's going to be the only, I guess, issue of this. The good news is I have more crit rate to injured, which is a roll you really want. Okay, so 2 million crit. That was the crit from the Deathblow. 2 million might sound like nothing to you because a Quake hits much higher, but it all adds up in the end. And I have a multiplier where once the target becomes injured, you start dealing more and more damage to it. So again, the same thing applies to this finalized version of it. You have to actually play the game. There's going to be no one-shotting bosses. Your clear is going to be smooth. Playstyle is going to be smooth, but there's no cheesing, right? No cheesing. You have to play the game. So that's the gameplay. We got that out of the way here. Now let's talk about the actual build. So the build, pretty much the same. I'm going to have a build planner, of course. Hammer the Ancients on 1 two-hander, accelerating on the other two-hander with 48% up to 50 attack speed. It just makes Hammer the Ancients feel so good. And if you have this with Unbridled Rage, say goodbye to your Fury. Just say goodbye. It's insta-deleted. Then we have stun damage, which you're stunning fairly often. Limitless Rage here. On the neck, of course, we have Disobedience, Bold Chieftains in the ring, and we're using Berserk Ripping on the second ring. We don't even need extra. This is how much rage. I don't think people understand this. So what I'm doing here is, if you want to use the shout ring, you can. I'm using 3 shouts. That's huge shout generation. What does this allow me to do? So I have no reduced fury cost here. I have it on the boots. You can get rid of those if you want. There's not a ton of options, but you can get rid of them if you want. You don't need resource generation on your ring. And there's just, this build unlocks so much. Like I said, this is complete Whirlwind gear. I have no gold. I literally had to borrow 5.7 million gold from someone. Shout out to my friend, by the way, who gave me that. Because I had no gold and I was trying to respec for my previous video and it said I couldn't do it. And I was like, oh no, now I have to go sell some stuff. So anyways, we have Numbing Wrath in the helmet. Bleeding damage, where's our bleed coming from? Great question. Bleed's coming from Berserk Ripping, and that's it. Since we're not one-shotting, even though we kind of are still, every time we deal direct damage while berserking, we're berserking pretty damn often. Because we also have Lunging Strike, which we're using in every 1.5 seconds. And every time we crit, it gives us 1.5 seconds of berserking, which lets us lunging into at least, you can literally hammer the Ancients twice in 1.5 seconds. It's kind of crazy. Kind of crazy here. So we're getting the DR from enemies who are alive while we're enraged and in berserk mode. So these are the things that I put these on because I wanted to talk about them in this video specifically and not just make a separate video on it. So a lot of people are figuring out now for some reason that crowd control and crowd control from exploiters and gauntlets apply to challenging shout. What am I trying to say here? Unfortunately, to show this, I'm going to have to go outside of town. I don't think I have to go to a dungeon. I mean, just to make this easier, let me start a random, we'll do the tier 69, why not? So if you saw the tooltip, it was like challenging shout was active for 7.43 seconds. And this isn't like game-changing news or anything, and I don't think there's a lot of value to it, but you guys can make your own decision and see if it's your style, right? I'm just using the basic imprinted versions of these. Of course, you can get better rolls and the effect will be higher, but you're about to see what I'm talking about here. Now that we're in a dungeon, okay, so 10.4 seconds. Where did those 3 seconds come from? As you can see here, increase the duration of crowd control and increases the duration of crowd control while you are healthy. Crowd control is tied to taunt, which is a crowd control, and the challenging shout ability, taunt, is tied to the damage reduction. So In theory, I guess you could get this down to like, or I guess up to 12-13 seconds of DR from Challenging Shout, but it's pretty much going to be off of cooldown anyways by that point. So I don't personally think it's viable. I mean, if this was viable, like I said, this is no news. People knew about this a long time ago. There were posts about this, that why is the crowd control duration applying to Challenging Shout DR? This actually happened when the first Shout nerf happened. People were talking about this. The reason why I don't think this is a big deal is because if you're going to run something like Disembowel and use bleeds, and when you kill enemies while bleeding they have a chance to lower cooldowns, you're going to be shouting very often anyways. And if Challenging Shout, if you're not getting it, I mean, maybe this is like an early mid-game thing. If you're willing to sacrifice damage and you want to run exploiters and smiting into, I mean, the boots don't matter. I would say pretty much always go exploiters in the boot, although there's the one where while you're unstoppable you can move through mobs. That's a pretty handy one to have, but since Hammer the Ancients you're one-shotting everything, this one might be the play. As far as dealing increased damage to unstoppable, a lot of people think bosses are unstoppable, but they're not actually unstoppable. Only mobs that are unstoppable are if there's an unstoppable affix in the map, or right after you stun. There's like a DR window after you stun where they're unstoppable. So I guess that's, you get extra damage there, but it's hard to say. So this is the one slot I would say you can get away with using exploiters for a small increase. Let's just take these off so we can get the, not these, the gloves, so we can see what the baseline is. So it's 7.43 seconds. We put the boots on. 8.9 seconds. You get just over a second more of damage reduction. Then you add the smiting. I have the lowest roll possible. And again, you get just over another second there. So all in all, it's going to be up to you guys. There are damage modifiers you can put on this if you want to simulate the more high damage Hammer the Ancients version in a machine gun oriented build, keeping in mind that this build pumps. So if you're doing so much overkill damage, I guess we can say, do you really need to survive that much? It's kind of one of the main reasons why people pick Hammer the Ancients over Whirlwind, because you're kind of just one-shotting everything. Anyway, so I'm not going to talk about that for too much. So we went over everything here. This one's huge. Basic skills grant 20% DR for 6 seconds, 100% uptime. So you have 100% damage reduction all times. If, I mean, for some reason you lose the 54% damage reduction, in theory, since this build kind of enables this to have such high uptime, you're only losing like 34%. I mean, only 34% DR is a lot, but still, it's not nothing. So outside of those changes, we have the axe expertise. Moving on to the skill tree. Skill tree is pretty straightforward. We're taking walking arsenal. This is what I was talking about. 10% multiplicative damage when using the different weapons. While all 3 bonuses are active, you gain an additional 15% multiplicative, which you want up at all times. 3 in tempered fury. We are taking concussion here. Everything else is pretty straightforward. We have 5 into Deathblow, 100% multiplicative boss damage. Deathblow hits Berserking, there's another source of Berserking there. We have Pit Fighter, we have Slang Strike, massive multiplier to injured, which pretty much guarantees you if you hit an injured, I mean, even without this, Deathblow's gonna pump, but it's just an added layer there. 2 in Raid Leader, 3 in Booming Voice, 1 in Warcry. We're only really taking Warcry because of Berserking. There's no other reason. I did take an extra point just for some more multiplicative damage when you hit 6 or more targets. Is it needed? Kind of up to you guys. There's a better point you see this where you can go. Guttural Royale, great choice. The best or second best damage reduction to Challenging Shout. You don't need any points in Challenging Shout. You need +3 defense on neck. Why do you need that? Because you only really need 1 point to Rallying Cry. We don't care about the Fury regen. I've actually taken Tactical Rallying Cry out of this build and it still works perfectly fine. It does. But that's with Whirlwind gear, so I left it on. Just because even though I'm like oversaturated with Fury with this build, you might not be. If you are already playing Hota and you want it to feel better, you should probably keep this at first, then take it off and see if it's more your style. Now, the only reason I had this skill at all in general, outside the Fury regen, that's kind of questionable is unstoppable. This is our unstoppable here, which is why it's very important. You can hold this if you want to, because like I said, you're not going to really run into fury issues here. And we're not taking, I don't know if you notice this, but we're not taking edge masters. So there's no major effect besides Hammer the Ancient deals 1x additional damage for each point of fury you have when using it. So Hammer the Ancients is fine. We have pressure point, and then we have the extra point here for berserking. Technically, if you wanted to and you felt you were good with your berserking uptime, which is pretty high right now. So we have Warcry, we have Deathblow, which is an 11-second cooldown, and then we have a chance on crit from lunging strikes. So that's the skill tree, the Paragon board. Now this is where it gets interesting. I did a few crazy things here. So we're stacking Max Fury. I would say the first two boards are normal. We have Martial first, then we have Might, then we have Wrath, then we have Imbiber for healthy damage because, like I said, speed farm content, who wouldn't want that? Then we went to the Carnage tree for even more attack speed while berserking with our crits, and we're critting often. So this is why this is like a machine gun build. I also figured out that since we're taking the vulnerable damage here, it's such a short path to the next tree. Why would I waste my time with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 extra points? I'm pretty sure I save at least one node here. You might be thinking, Murder, what is one node? One node can be extra vulnerable damage. One node can also be extra healthy damage. Now, if you're struggling with cooldowns for any reason, you can take Disembowel. Where is Disembowel? Disembowel is you can take Disembowel while killing a bleeding enemy, which will always be bleeding during your while you're berserking. You have a 10% chance of reducing the cooldown of non-ultimates or not even using an ultimate, so all of your skills will be reduced or have a chance to by 1 second, and you're killing things all the time. So you can definitely take that if you would like to, instead of additional Imbiber damage. Like I said, this build isn't going to fall short on damage. I haven't pushed this to like 80 or 90, but if you're going to push to 80 or 90, there's no point in going as fast as I'm going. There's just no point. And if you're going to do that, you might as well just stick to the typical slow and miserable Hota build, right? Take Unbridled Rage, wait pack to pack, take things nice and slow. This build's all for speed. You go fast, you hammer the Ancients fast, everything. This is all about attack speed and fast pace, and that's why it's called the machine gun build. Crits, more attack speed, all that good stuff. Now, as far as BIS Rolls on this, you don't need Lucky Hit. You don't need Lucky Hit. What you really want, and what I would have preferred, is instead of strength here, I would have wanted crit rate while injured. Crit rate while injured is arguably the best in slot. Pretty sure it is best in slot because of how strong this multiplier is. 23x increased damage while injured. That's a massive multiplier. Now, the only time you wouldn't need this is if you're one-shotting the mobs outright. As soon as you're not doing that, so Whirlwind, this iteration of Hammer the Ancients, pretty much every other skill Barbarian has, because it's not bugged like the Quake is, this injured multiplier is like meta, because it's so like nothing else that I can see on this tree besides Unbridled Rage for core skills gives that much damage. Could be wrong. This is 15. This is also 15. I just have 3 from neck here. And I mean, this is 100x to bosses only. Yeah, so I'm fairly certain there's no higher multiplier. 6, 3, 18. 18, I guess, is kind of close to 23. That would be the second highest, perhaps. But I'm not going to go into this looking for all the different multipliers here. We know what skills are good. We know what skills are not good so far. But even just quickly looking through this, I mean, I guess if you stack this up, this is 30. So there could be an argument for Upheaval. Rest in peace. This used to be such a good skill. But outside of that, 3x more Fury. Yeah, so there's no higher multiplier unless you're stacking Fury for this. This is, okay, so Violent Whirlwind is in fact higher, but it happens after 2 seconds, and Vulnerability from Exploits after 3 seconds is over, so you only really get 1 second there. I would not call that worth by any means. So case in point, Injured is an insane, Slaying Strike specifically, an insane multiplier. So why you wouldn't want crit rate while injured is beyond me if you're not one-shotting. So my total stats, as you can see, 42% crit rate, could be better. I'm pretty sure I don't have a low crit rate roll. I'm missing 0.6 here, 0.6 here, so that's an additional 1% crit rate. This is max crit rate. Yeah, so I'm only missing 1% crit rate. So 43.3 is what I would cap out at. And the final thing I didn't mention is Mortal Draw. So we're taking Mortal Draw, making this a crazy fast-paced build. You're constantly going from lunging strike, spamming Hammer the Ancients, lunging strike, use the one Deathblow to try and one-shot and finish something off, to reset the cooldown, so on and so forth. So 18% additional crit rate on top of what we already have. And as we can see here, plus 112% damage with skill swaps. Not even Imbiber gives you that much damage. That's 97% while healthy. This is 112%. It's additive damage, but who cares? That's from one glyph, which is kind of crazy. And the rest of this is berserking damage because our berserking uptime is so incredibly high. Then we have damage to elites here. And in case you're curious, you're thinking like, what's the board we normally take that we're giving up? It is the Weapon Master one. What were we giving up from Weapon Master? It was a pretty nice Paragon board and Hunter Killer. But we are getting Hunter Killer, as you guys probably already noticed. From here, it's not quite 32% increased elite damage, but it's still elite damage. We're getting 8, 8, and then 16. So while it's not quite as good elite-wise, what we're getting from Mortal Draw and from Carnage, it's hard to justify this tree being any better. So that's going to conclude the build guide. That's the build. Tons of fun. If you like Hammer the Ancients and think it's really clunky right now and you're not having a good time, this may just be the build for you. Give me your thoughts and feedback. The planner will be below. And that's going to conclude it for this video. If you enjoy this content, smash that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.